And good afternoon. In a short time, I want to provide my personal reflections on water reform in Australia. It's been my whole career. I watched with interest the debate 40 years ago in Australia about volumetric charging for water and how water was becoming a precious product. And with a lot of debate, started in Hunter Water and as an early adopter and was loved by the community. And then 30 years ago, I rejoined Hunter Water as the first corporation in Australia, the first water utility. And there was a lot of debate at the time. Principally, if you formed a corporation, would they just focus on being commercial? Would they lose the real focus on customers and community and service? Would commercial drive everything else? And there were several features that didn't allow this to occur. The first was they had a diverse skill-based board that realised to be successful, you had to provide great value and service to the community. We had to solve a backlog of capital works and we had to improve water quality standards and environment. And we had to keep prices under control. So Hunter Water from the startup had the first operating licence in Australia. It was an innovation at the time. It was independently audited, checked transparently and publicly the organisation's performance against things that mattered to the community. Highest water quality standard in the land had to be met, environmental performance standards, customer metrics, unplanned outages in water and wastewater. And the thing that I recall at the time was that the way it was set up was that there were huge penalties for non-compliance that rippled through the organisation, from a letter of rebuke to multi-million-dollar fines, to even the CEO and the board being sacked for continued non-performance, to even the organisation losing the right to serve the community. So given that, every board meeting that I went to had a huge focus on the non-financial metrics before they discussed the financial. It was a real step up in reporting. Honest reporting was critical. New focus meant that all cost streams came under focus. We wanted to do more for the community at the lowest possible cost. And I remember it as an amazing time for innovation, measurement performance, benchmarking, a desire to be the best. I love being part of that business. And I progressed from a lower level manager when I first joined it to becoming managing director in 2004. And I saw, after Hunter Water, corporations being formed right across Australia. And generally a state-owned corporation, but new council-owned corporations came into being in Queensland and later in Tasmania. As my colleague Tony Kelly has said, there was a big debate in Tasmania about the need to reform. And in 2005, I was asked to go to a major conference like this in Tasmania, a similar auditorium, and give a presentation on how Hunter Water had gone with being corporatised. And the question was, if you form a corporation, could you trust a corporation, and would the organisation just focus on being commercial? Now, I went through the archives and I found the slides that I used some 15 years ago in the debate in Tasmania. And I was being asked questions about how the new organisation responded with results in customer satisfaction, water quality, value for money. Was the charging system considered fair? And how did the organisation respond to what would be considered a necessary increase in operating costs? And just quickly, I'll share some of the slides I used that day. Now, the first one on customer satisfaction, incredible increase since corporatisation. Customers really found that they got great customer satisfaction because we were talking to them. We were trying to drive forward with things that customers cared about. And so we hit all-time highs. Water is safe to drink. We had problems when we were corporatised, but it was a real focus of the organisation with penalties for not achieving it. We really prioritised our investment to make sure one of the best things we could do was to provide clean, safe drinking water. Good value for money, started off low, we became corporatised, reached an all-time high. The charging system is fair was a huge debate. It went to from lows in the mid-30s to a high of 69% thought that the system was high. And the operating costs, because we looked critically at all operating cost streams and we wanted to find innovation, better ways of doing things, asset management. We wanted to visit best practice organisations. It was just the time when we drove operating costs to provide great value, and shows the typical Australian water industry and Hunter Water at the time after corporatisation, but a 40% reduction in operating costs. And that lubricated the process where we could invest massively in new infrastructure and drive value for customers. Now, looking at the success of water corporations across Australia, what stands out, and diverse skill-based boards, they look equally at conformance of the organisation and performance of the organisation with a real focus on customers, customer at the heart of everything you do. They want you to benchmark. If there's one thing that I'd say I can give advice is form a smaller number of major utilities that are willing to share their results and able to adopt them and drive value for customers. Independent price setting and standard setting with teeth for non-compliance, major focus on asset management. New Zealand's famous around the world for what you do in asset management. And for 15 years, I chaired, as Peter said, the National Committee on Utility Excellence and Asset Management. And I just saw what was able to be achieved with corporations across Australia. Scale is critical. You've got to have a certain scale to get a critical mass of people driving great improvements and investing in new technology and major procurement savings. That scale and those benefits really give value to customers. Incredible accountability increase, incredible change in culture to have a customer focus, but achievement, teamwork, honest feedback and care. That's a work in progress today. And an ability to benchmark and share across all the cost streams. Now, I want to deal with a couple of myths. Corporations. One is that when you become a corporation, you outsource everything. And it is true that all cost streams come into focus. But it's equally true that what you want to do is work with your workforce to drive great reform. You want a workforce with a culture that says we want to look at best practice and we want to help parts of the organisation to achieve best practice. So while there was significant outsourcing to the private sector, in places like Hunter Water and Sydney Water, Tas Water and Queensland corporations, they still have an in-house workforce for operation and maintenance. And I saw the changes that we did in Hunter Water and Sydney Water, and it's an amazing increase in morale in achieving that. Another myth was that the relationships with unions would be increasingly combative, and that is also not true. Yes, you want to drive change, but I found that when I went to Sydney Water, I wasn't happy with the relationship. The union said that they were the circle of resistance and that we were the circle of persistence, and we were acting in opposite directions. But we sat down with an MOU to say, how do we change for the future? And the things we agreed on is that we want to provide great value to customers, and we want motivated and safe and engaged staff, and we want the business to be successful. So that led a major reform for introducing great change as a partnership of unions, management and employees. I think Sydney Water became a national case study of how that should become. Now I look back to 1992. I joined the first corporation in Australia for it to become the normal model. And there's been incredible water reform. But I just want to finish with a point that I think there's enormous water reform occurring in Australia today. Virtually all water utilities in Australia are looking to become more customer-centric. The vision of the Australian water industry is customer-driven, enriching life. That's why we exist. At Sydney Water, our vision was be to the life stream of Sydney for generations to come, the evocative lifeblood of water within the community, working with the community. And all utilities, Corporations Australia, have a desire to be a digital utility of the future, mass connectivity. And I'm seeing at the moment, it's amazing what technology can do IoT sensors to detect sewer blockages, water pressure. This is leak detection. And this is an area that's booming, and it's all about scale, having a certain size. Mobility solutions, customer operating hubs, thinking smarter. In 2019, Sydney Water won the award as Digital Utility of the Year, and it won the International Water Prize for Digital Smart Projects. So the scale gives you an ability to drive great value for customers. There's also at the moment a longer-term partnership with the private sector in procurement. And that longer-term partnership means that you can have time to invest in innovation and driving value with partners that are high-quality partners that care about safety and customers. My last point is that what I see at the moment is that water utilities are shifting from a traditional role of master plumber to master planner. And they're increasingly focusing on livable cities and adaptation for climate change. There's an incredible increase in recycled water focus, not of 3 waters, but moving to 1 water in the future. And this requires great engagement with the community and collaboration with councils. And I love the talk this morning that Hamish gave about city planning, and that's my experience. You get together in a collaboration with the city and you say, what do we want this city to be in 30 years' time? And you put in place major place-based infrastructure compacts where you're sharing results on infrastructure for transport, for land planning, for water, for energy, for gas, for waste streams. And that's why you are achieving the outcomes for the future. So there's enormous reform that's occurred over the last 40 years, 30 years, but there's enormous reform that's occurring now. And I think that you need scale to achieve the greatest success by collaborating with others to achieve outcomes. I'll leave it there. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Kevin, and please stay on the screen. We've got time for a couple of questions. You can hear us okay?
I can.
Great. Look, a couple of questions that have come through. Probably the first one is around culture and people that you've raised. So the question is, what cultural challenges did the water industry in Australia face as it was trying to become more customer-centric?
Yeah, interesting. When I first came Managing Director of Hunter Water and Sydney Water, we did a culture survey where we got the entire organisation to say what's the current culture and what do we want the culture to be. And we noticed that our culture was risk averse. It's all about bureaucracy, not taking chances, low accountability. And so when we asked the organisation, what culture do you want? They said, we want to drive great value for customers. We want to have achievement. We want to work as a team. We want to, self-reflect, and we want to encourage the best. So I got everyone to do in the higher levels of management, going down to level 4, a 360-degree review, and Tony Kelly is one of the best in Australia in doing this as well. So we've done culture work, starts with the MD doing his own 360 review and sharing that with the organisation. And if you want to get real customer focus, you get metrics. Our customer operation hub is getting real-time information from customers as the work is being done, so that people can see in real time, am I making a difference to customers' lives? So you want an organisation with a culture that you care so much about that. You desire it. You want to know. You become so proud of what you're doing.
Thanks, Kevin. I hadn't heard that before, Managing Director being accountable for making a difference to customers' lives. That's good. Just last question, we've got a couple of minutes, is look, take yourself forward 10 years, and if you think about the Australian water sector, where do you think it'll be in another decade?
Yeah, so my great vision for it is it's the digital utility of the future. That you've got a motivated, engaged workforce where you've got mass connectivity. The water and wastewater systems are smart systems. But you're using technology to connect with customers, your assets, your best people, and that you're becoming make our vision real, which is to be the life stream of the community. So you actually are working with the councils, transport, gas, energy, and you're putting 30-year plans in place, and you're saying, what cities do we want to create? And the issue for us in Sydney was that our western plains, where our growth was, we know with climate change, they're 8 to 10 degrees hotter. They've got half the vegetation and half the rainfall. And if we want to talk about livable cities, we need to rethink how we do water, not from a minimum standard of water supply, but really rethinking about recycled water for blue-green corridors through communities, for lagoons, but how we integrate stormwater, wastewater, potable water to make a difference, to provide a cooling effect for those communities, to give kids somewhere that they can play on hot days, get out of the house, get off the Nintendo Switch and play in the parks, then play rugby and beat Australia. But yeah, so I think the vision is that the Australian water industry changes so that we're just such a critical part of the lifeblood of the city, and we use technology to drive it forward.